to be here in Bucharest to participate in the Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum. And our discussion today is going to be about the geostrategic landscape, but very importantly, how economic competitiveness, productivity growth, ensuring a high standard of living for our citizens, and the powerful role of the private sector in collaboration with government is really going to create that duality between, yes, national security, but without economic strength and competitiveness, there aren't resources and capacity to address these huge security challenges we're all facing. And I know some others are going to join us. The President is still there. So we have a very short period of time. I'm going to be very brief with a few remarks and then introduce our very distinguished panelists. I first want to say, what is the GFCC? The Global Federation of Competitiveness Councils is a leadership network from some 35 countries of CEOs, competitiveness councils, university presidents, as well as civil society. The chair is Chad Holliday, who had been chair and CEO of DuPont, then Bank of America, most recently chair is Royal Dutch Shell. And we have a very distinguished panelist of GFCC members that are going to be with us today. I also want to acknowledge that George Scoturo and the New Strategy Center is a recent member of the GFCC and participated in our Global Innovation Summit in Belfast last year, as is Bogdan Radovan of the University of Economics in Bucharest, representing Romania. Also, Simeon Simokas, the founder and CEO of Delphi Economic Forum, is very active in GFCC. We always partner for the fantastic Delphi Economic Forum each April in Greece. Enwar Bouyabes, who spoke last night from Kazakhstan, Nikem Kumba, the new head of the African Union of Scientists as well. So we have a great representation here. We all know that the geostrategic landscape is one of tremendous turmoil. The winds are soaring, the storms are growing, and we also have the epical challenges between the United States and China. Could certainly give a whole talk on that. But let me just say on that front that China is really trying to rewrite the rules of the global economy in a state authoritarian way. We know what's happening with the Belt and Road Initiative. China now controls over 40 ports, and as we heard last night, in penetrating now into the Black Sea. If you listen to President Xi's very important talk on civil-military fusion, it underscores the reality that all the great technological transformations that are underway, the integration, the merger of the biotech, the IT, the cognitive, the materials revolution, all are dual-use technologies. You can no longer separate civilian innovation capacity for economic purposes with the applications to security. And of course, we can all talk about what's happened to AI in the last year. It's staggering, the change, the pace, this revolutionary capability. Also, on the China front, the rule of law, the protection of intellectual property, all the enabling conditions for private sector innovation are really being challenged. On the energy space, energy is the lifeblood of any economy. Without energy and power, nothing happens. And as a colleague said, we didn't leave the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. But energy is in huge transformation, and this part of the world has some very strategic assets in Romania with the gas fields, in Bulgaria as a leader in nuclear, and others. But countries need to address the reality of energy scarcity and poverty really has to be overcome, and AI and the demand for electricity is playing many roles, including the revitalization of nuclear energy. On productivity, at the end of the day, nations have to grow their productivity to deliver a standard of living for their citizens. There are huge productivity gaps in the world, and I will just say, since we're here in Europe, all of you, if you have not, must read the Draghi report on competitiveness. Europe has a systemic productivity lag. Their productivity is 2 to 3 times lower than the United States. Why is that? Why is Europe so far behind on productivity? And what can this region do to accelerate its economic dynamism? So with that, let me turn to our wonderful panel. I will first introduce the Honorable Lulzim BASHA, who I believe is going to be with us on Zoom from Tirana. He is a member of GFCC on our board. He helped create the new Albanian Council on Competitiveness, and he is the chair of the Democratic Party, etc. From Romania, we have Mr. Igor BURAKOVSKY, the Director of Economic Sciences, well, from Ukraine, of course, Institute for Economic Research and Policy Consulting, but you're here in Romania. From the United...
From Ukraine.
Pardon?
From Ukraine.
Yes.
I'm from Ukraine.
Ukraine, I know. So from the United States and Cameroon, GFCC Distinguished Fellow, Dr. Hippolyte FOFACK. He's at Harvard University. He's been at the World Bank. Most recently, he has been chief economist of the African Export-Import Bank and is really an authority on the profound opportunities and transformation in Africa. And next to me is my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Kalin PESHOV, the chairman of GBS in Sofia, a global, internationally renowned construction, design, engineering firm with offices in, of course, this part of the world, but also in the United States and Asia. And very importantly, Mr. PESHOV, Kalin, is the recent co-founder and leader of the new Bulgarian Council on Competitiveness, which we had the great pleasure last Thursday to inaugurate in Sofia with the Deputy Prime Minister and the leadership of the private sector in Bulgaria, a fantastic initiative to drive the growth and prosperity of this region. And then Alexandru, REFF, who's the country managing partner for Deloitte in Romania and Moldova. And I have to say, Deloitte's very active in the U.S. Council on Competitiveness. Our vice chair has been a president of Deloitte Consulting. Janet Foudy has been very active with us, so I know Deloitte's playing a very pivotal role. So let me start with just a quick ask of each of you. What do you see really from your perspective as business leaders, as university leaders, as competitiveness leaders in your respective countries and in the GFCC? Just quickly share with us, what do you think are the two most strategic issues you need to address to have the productivity growth and the security? And then we'll talk a little bit how that relates to actions on the ground. So if I may, I will start with you, Alexandru, since you're in Deloitte and you do many studies and analysis of what drives growth and prosperity in the countries where you are so active. Very short, because we're going to have other discussions. And I'm watching this clock. I've been told absolutely 45 minutes. It's very short.
Thank you. It is a privilege to be here. Very grateful for the opportunity to contribute in this distinguished panel. To address specifically the topic of competitiveness and indeed productivity, there are various challenges which are specific to Romania, and then some of them overlap with challenges in Europe as a whole, and then some challenges are of course global, and we've been going through so many crises in the last 7 or 8 years. I'm not sure whether this adds to the difficulty, the leadership difficulty in front of us, or rather reassures us that we have acquired the skills needed to navigate such volatility, such complexity and such uncertainty. I think the biggest contributor to productivity and competitiveness in the long run is technology development. This has driven prosperity along the last 2 millennia, and things are accelerating. That there are developments which are more disruptive by the day, and this is something that is so far giving more hope than worry to the business community. We are surveying indeed CEOs, and so far everyone, or a large majority of them, more than 2/3, are driving ambitious and relatively well-funded initiatives to capture the potential of technology, and do that not just with a view to optimize their processes and lower their costs, but many of them trying to address the strategic opportunity, which is to reinvent their organizations, their products, their services, access new market segments, and drive different type of engagement with their customers. So I would say technology by far is the biggest driver of competitiveness and productivity.
Thank you. So business certainty, cost structures, where investments occurring, all of these are absolutely essential. Let me turn to you, Kalin, as the chairman of a global enterprise in design, in the most advanced construction. I had the opportunity to see some of your projects, including the whole new Sofia airport, and I have to say I was stunned and impressed, and you are a real player in the nuclear frontier as well. So share a little bit from your perspective as chairman of this global enterprise that's, yes, very much anchored in the region, but global, including in the U.S. And then during our session, I want to ask you about the new Bulgarian Advisory Board on Competitiveness.
Thank you very much. You start your question with sharing two major challenges. I was preparing 4 or 5, but I'll try to limit it to 2 then. So the first is definitely the energy. For me, competitiveness in Eastern Europe, Balkans, on Europe is impossible in the situation of a price of energy. You just raised this topic, you raised it when we had the founding the EFC in Bulgaria a couple of days ago, that the region has 4 times more expensive price of energy than US and 6 times more expensive than China. And it's impossible to be competitive with all the type of business who are related with the energy. That's why also our company is focused mainly on building energy infrastructure and the related infrastructure to the energy, so to ensure a better environment for the businesses to grow. And the second challenge I was pointing the regulations which in Europe, especially members of the European Union, are severe, and with the direction we all heard what Ms. von der Leyen said in Davos in January. And also we have read the Draghi report that it's really important to decrease dramatically the regulation in order to allow the business to grow and to continue and to be competitive, as the competitiveness really the basic of everything. And coming back to that point, yesterday literally I had a meeting with the EU officials, and they say that they have a target to decrease the regulation with 25%. I was amazed what is 25% decreasing the regulations. What will be the problem if we decrease them with 28%? That will be very low regulated and it's very dangerous. So I still have complete misunderstanding in Brussels on that, and I think I'll point this to think. And again, because you start with the opening of GFCC Bulgaria, I thank you very much again for the honor to trust us for that. We strongly believe that on the Balkans we can work together and we can combine the efforts in order to make the environment better.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to come back and ask you again about your optimism or pessimism on the response to the Draghi report, because as the overview of that report said, competitiveness and productivity are existential threats in Europe, and everything we're talking about on security in the other room, if there's no productive economy, there won't be resources to address these challenges. Before we turn to other parts of the world, I see from the region, our colleague Lulzim BASHA is with us. Lulzim, as I said, founded the Albanian Competitiveness Council. Lulzim, can you hear us? And can you make a comment, please, quickly on the situation in Romania on competitiveness and what you're doing to advance the strategic agenda in Albania under the leadership, again, of the private sector, which is very, very significant. I'm sorry you're not here with us. Lulzim. I don't think he can hear us. Well, I will come back to you, Lulzim, when you're connected with us. So, turning to the United States and to Africa, a dear friend and colleague, Hippolyte FOFACK, you are not only an eminent economist globally, but you really know what's going on in the part of the world that's going to have the greatest growth, the talent things. Share with us a little bit about your assessment on these critical issues, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Africa and our goals for an all-Africa competitiveness movement.
Thank you very much, Madame la Présidente. Thank you for chairing these sessions. And thank you very much for really creating the space to reflect on Africa and the world within the context of this forum. And I fully concur with you that we've actually entered a different era in the world where geopolitics somehow has become preeminent over economics. And linked to that is the issue of uncertainty, which we see affecting productivity, affecting investment, affecting long-run growth. So I think technology is very important as a major driver of competitiveness, but in the context of geopolitics, where we see increasingly delayed investment, and if you move to full decoupling, that will actually affect innovations, which is another key driver of competitiveness. So it's very important for us, as we look at this factor, technology, human capital, to also look at the operating environment, the issue of uncertainty and volatility, which has actually been elevated by the geopolitics. It's very important, actually, if we are looking at the whole world globally, to look at variations in different regions. And one aspect in that variation will be access to capital, which actually create a condition for a different rate of return on investment, undermining that process of global convergence. Another important aspect that I would like to put on the table, which is a global phenomenon, is the issue of education and human capital. And we are moving toward technology, the AI, but we are going to be looking for a different set of skills, which require training in a certain way that will actually address the issue of the big data issue, the constraint in the AI space, the data centers, and as well as we may be going back to chemical engineering as a critical field to address the issue of energy that you mentioned earlier. Let me stop here.
All right, thank you. Igor, Ukraine. Ukraine is active also in the Council on Competitiveness and the GFCC, so we're thrilled you're here. We're talking a lot about Ukraine at this forum, but share with us your perspective on the economic competitiveness issues. Of course, you're major producers in agriculture, but very high tech as well.
Thank you very much for an opportunity to talk here. But when we are talking about Ukrainian competitiveness, it seems to me we need to start from a bit different concept. We need to talk about economic resilience. This is very important, taking into account that currently actually my country is in the war, and this war has a number of very specific economic implications. The first economic implication is security. I'm talking about military security, I'm talking about the security of assets, and I'm talking about the security of supplies, energy supplies and other things. But without these two components, it's practically impossible to talk about business as usual or normal business. Point number two, we are witnessing a kind of common problem with the European Union and your countries. We are facing the acute labor force shortage. It's not only about structural problems, it's about, physical shortage of the people. Some of them are in the army, some of them are located outside the country. And here actually we have another problem. In order to survive, Ukrainian business needs to go outside. Needs to go outside simply because the local market diminished, for obvious reasons, and for a number of them going outside, exporting, investing outside, it's a kind of survival strategy. And in order to pursue the strategies, they need to invest much more money and much more effort than normal businesses. And my last point, but not the least, but not the last point, is about the future. So again, actually, we are talking about economic resilience. We are talking about the necessary policy changes in order to ensure economic resilience and to think about future reconstruction of Ukraine. There is quite a popular slogan, building back better. For me, it's clear what that is mean, but for me, it's unclear how to achieve it, how to achieve it right now. And another problem, which is very important, that Ukrainian economic policy right now and Ukrainian competitiveness policy is driven by our extensive and intensive cooperation with international financial organizations. There is a lot of conditionalities, there is a lot of things which are to be done, and of course our ambitious plans to conclude negotiations on Ukraine European Union accession is something which accelerating economic reforms in the country. Though again, actually, when we are talking about economic reforms in the times of war, it needs a specific conference, maybe 2 days or 3 days or even 1 week. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Lulzim is with us, so I hope he can hear us. And oh, there you are. Great. Sorry you're not with us in person, but wonderful to see you. And thank you for your leadership as the founder and chair of the new Albanian Council on Competitiveness. Share with us, Lulzim, from your perspective in Albania, but of course you're a European global leader, so kind of what are the key issues now that are impacting this competitiveness, economic security intersection we're addressing on this panel this morning? Lulzim, the floor is yours if you can, there. No sound. I think it's coming, I hope. We always joke in meetings that we have IT problems, and I was just recently at a meeting at IBM, and none of their IT worked, so we were all laughing because at IBM, you'd think they would never have a tech resiliency issue. So we'll again come back to Lulzim if we can't get the sound going. So let's dig a little bit further on the issues that have been raised, and two in particular, well, three in particular rise to the surface. And that is this intersection between the government's role to set the enabling conditions for innovation, for investment and growth in collaboration with the private sector. And then the second issue is the talent imperative. You know, people go and invest where they have a great workforce, when they know that they're going to be able to have the human resources. So, Kalin, you know, you have shared with me some of the talent challenges in Bulgaria for your business, but also, of course, a great tradition of manufacturing. You're providing, you know, all the ammunition going into Ukraine right now. But do you have talent challenges when you're doing this new nuclear engineering and design renaissance? Where are you getting the talent, and what's the government doing or not doing to help you there?
Yes, thank you for this question. You start with the collaboration between the public sector and the state and the private sector in terms of the solving these challenges with whatever it's energy problem, lack of technology or lack of talented people. And we were together with a meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister of Bulgaria, who say that the most important thing for the state is not to create burdens for the business, just at least to do nothing, but not to break their intention to do something. So even if they don't do anything, it's even better if they do regulation and they don't support the business. But coming to the question about talented people, also my colleagues share this is one of the two challenges about the human resources. It's getting to be a problem into Eastern Europe as well. We see it for the last 10-15 years in Western Europe already, but we are coming with the same issues now. As you mentioned, historically, Eastern Europe and Bulgaria particularly, we have a very good education system, good language school, good engineering school, and law and some other universities. So we can see the renaissance of this. We see young people are coming back into our countries, Bulgaria or Romania, from the Central Europe due to the recession there. So we see this as a platform for reunion. And what you mentioned, it's exactly the right that currently our company is building 10 or 11 different factories for many things, from defense industry to electronics, building parts from BMW or electrical bicycles or any other thing. So there is a growth in the industry, and I do believe that it will continue in the future years.
And I saw your designs for one of the most advanced engineering facilities to recycle the whole old construction materials that are currently in landfills. I think that's going to be a big export business for you, because everybody's going to want one of those facilities.
Yeah, true. We are talking with my colleague Plamena, who is actually the mother of this project in our company. We are seeing different projects now on the screen, and we are told that our project could be potentially here as well, together with the helicopters and the platforms for taking oil from the seas. So yes, we put a lot of efforts, and there's a lot to be done, but it's something new, and it's a good example where the European Commission supported us with some financing, and we did a lot of work, and then we have the university and the academic world, so it's a really good practice. We hope we'll be able to prove it in 1 or 2 years and to show it in the next forum that it's really working.
Thank you. Lulzim, are you on now? Can we hear you?
I am on. Can you hear me?
Yay, we're glad to see you. Yes, we can. So welcome, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on some of these strategic issues that are concerning you as a global leader, but also, you know, as a leader of the Democratic Party in Albania. And again, thank you for your leadership in creating the private sector Albanian Council on Competitiveness.
Thank you, Deborah. It's unfortunate that I cannot be in Bucharest in person, but I'm very happy to be able to participate online. And thank you to Mr. Scutaru for his invitation to be part of this forum. I would have liked to have been there in person because the last time I was there, I have very good memories. That was 2008, it's quite some time ago, and I was there as foreign minister to receive the invitation in the NATO summit of Bucharest of 2008 for Albania to join NATO alongside Croatia. It was April 2008. I remember that being a very joyous day for me, for my delegation, for Croatia, for the alliance under the leadership of President Bush. I remember a couple of people were not very happy. That was President Putin and his foreign minister Lavrov. They expressed their frustration clearly during the dinner that we had later that evening. But unfortunately, it did not stop at that. A few months later, Russia orchestrated the attack against Georgia, key player on the Black Sea, east of where you are there. A few years later, Crimea was the next. Now we're coping with the war of aggression in Ukraine, all of them affecting not only the Black Sea region and the Balkans, Europe, and all of the Euro-Atlantic Alliance as a whole. So that is pretty much in our face as the major challenge, since that was the first question you asked, to economic prosperity, to a competitive economy in our region and in our countries. And this is something that we have to resolve, and it can only be resolved in compliance with our values and principles, and alignment and compatibility is the word I'm going to use very shortly in 3 dimensions. This is the first dimension, the security dimension. There can be no alternative solution but one that respects the rule-based international order, that respects the sovereignty and the security and the integrity of the nations, both in the Black Sea region, in the Balkans, as well as European Union, NATO, and wider. This is something that deeply affects everything we do, including, of course, the economic component and the parity of our economies and of our. On the heels of that comes something that is related to security, that is energy security and energy as a whole. I cannot but second what Mr. PESHOV said, that our energy infrastructure in the region, particularly in the Balkans, is falling behind what is necessary to bring alignment, compatibility between our nations and make economic prosperity, capital investments, trade, transfer of technology much better than they are, and to bring them to the level of the US or the European Union. And investment in energy, investment in energy production, investment in energy security in particular, since many of our nations for a long time have been too dependent on Russia regarding energy and energy policy. That is a key challenge and a key opportunity, and I welcome very much all those who are putting their efforts, their thought, their capital and their know-how, in particular US investors on the Adriatic coast right now, trying to bring up LNG terminals, LNG-based energy production, which only complements hydropower production in Albania, solar and wind power in Montenegro, and hopefully also a long-term solution for North Macedonia, for Greece, for Bulgaria, Romania, and other nations in the Western Balkans. That is, goes hand by hand with completing infrastructure interconnectivity, which has come a long way in the last 20 years, but it's still not where it should be. And it increases the cost of transport, both maritime, rail, and road transport. We have to follow through with our commitments as countries, both in the framework of the EU and EU-related programs, as well as bilateral and regional programs. And that is the third compatibility I want to mention. Romania is a good place to remind ourselves, in particular after Sunday's election, and I do not want to hide my pleasure at the choice of the Romanian people and congratulate the president-elect. that since the entry of Romania into the EU, its GDP has grown exponentially. It's grown by a multitude compared to normal growth within the economic cycles of economic crisis as well. For other existing members of the EU, Romania's economy has skyrocketed through the roof. That is the virtue of cooperation, that is a virtue of competitivity within markets that reward talent and hard work. That is where Albania wants to get to. That is the final station for all of the Western Balkans and hopefully for some of the countries of the Black Sea region as well. These are the three main challenges that I would like to single out. Security challenge caused entirely because of Russia's aggressive behavior, starting with Georgia, Crimea, and now Ukraine. The energy and infrastructure challenge, and the pure competitiveness challenge that needs to be addressed within the EU, the common market parameters, but also with a view to improving and innovating when it comes to restrictions that are not so helpful when, as far as competitivity is concerned also. It was mentioned earlier in the panel.
Thank you.
And finally, Western Balkans. We have two more challenges to resolve. One is to put to rest the remains of the conflict between Kosovo and Serbia, and I cannot escape this opportunity to invite my Romanian friends and colleagues to move forward with normalizing relations with Kosovo and allowing Kosovo to join the partnership for NATO, while also helping Serbia in this way to detach itself from a historical problem and move forward in the European integration process, and be as decisive and as forward-looking when it comes to the stability and the prosperity of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you.
Because the resolution of these two regional problems is deeply connected to our security and also to our economic prosperity.
So Lulzim, last thing I want to ask you, because we're going to turn to our other panelists in the short time we have. Talent, people are brilliant all over the world. Do you think your fantastic chief scientist of ChatGPT, who's Albanian, is going to come and do a big investment in Albania in AI centers? Yes or no?
I am very passionate about bridging the talent gap by bringing thousands of young Albanians up to speed and following the examples of Mira Murati and Uljan Sharka, two brilliant scientists in the area of artificial intelligence and mechatronics. And yes, they will come, but the governments have to do their job. This is an area where governments should lead and not sit back. And that is why I believe that strongly subsidizing the professional education in these areas is a top priority for Albania and should be a top priority for all our nations.
Thank you. In the time we have, I want to turn to you again, Hippolyte, since we're talking about talent and placemaking innovation, and you are so knowledgeable about the African continent writ large, but so much of the strategies on Africa have been focused around aid and development in the sense that, you know, Africa can't do things unless it has massive aid. Could you have a brilliant perspective on aid, and it needs to be disrupted, and share that quickly with us.
I think there's one thing that President Trump has done very well, really, is to disrupt the aid industry, which has essentially been a status quo industry as far as Africa is concerned. We're 60 years after the aid dependency. We've not seen any progress, whether in human capital or whether in economic growth or poverty. It's quite telling that the continent, which is about 17% of the world populations, has become home to more than 60% of the world poor after 60 years of aid dependency and aid assistance. One thing that we've not done in the aid industry, specifically the World Bank, virtually not invested in human capital the way we should. Just give you one statistics. Africa has 91 engineers and scientists per million, 91, against 2,500 in Asia and 4,400 in Europe and 4,500 in the US. What we're discussing here, whether it is in the AI or energy, depend very much on human capital, the engineering and scientists to transform commodities into products, into engineering and manufacturing good. And the consequence of that model, which has actually shifted the focus on what should be, have been very significant. Let's take trade between Africa and China, for instance. And since 2015, Africa has been accumulating trade deficit with China. $38 billion in 2015, $64 billion in 2023, and that has been growing in part because what happened is, under that model, Africa will export raw material and re-import back from China manufactured goods at higher price. There comes your deficit. Another illustration is trade between Africa and India as we speak. India is actually importing oil, crude oil from the continent, refining it, and reselling it back to the continent at a high price. There comes the deficit. So it's very important for us to really emphasize the issue of human capital and to provide the resources that we need to actually transform this good locally, integrate Africa into the new energy vehicle, not as exporter of lithium, but also manufacturing of what we call electric battery and so forth. Another important aspect, if I may, in addition to human capital constraint, which is related, is what I call the high perception premium, which has actually forced African country, and we've been on ease about the 10-year yield on the US 10-year yield rising to 4.6%, which is significant in terms of shock. But when you compare that to Nigeria paying 19% interest on the yield in Nigeria, it's not acceptable. And the issue of perception premium and access to capital, which has been a major constraint to really sustaining, providing the basic in terms of infrastructure development. You mentioned energy. I think energy crisis is a real issue in Africa, but investing in energy requires that we get government support, which is very much constrained by what I call the high fiscal incidence of sovereign debt. Unless we tackle these two issues, access to financing and human capital, we'll continue to be in a world where we have two speeds. We have one part of the world growing faster, while the rest of the world, Africa in particular, continue to be dragged down into greater dependency and poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hippolyte. And under your leadership, I know we're going to do very important things in the GFCC with Africa, bringing our Global Innovation Summit. But I have to say, in this platform, whether you're a candidate or not, I hope you'll be the next president of the African Union. They couldn't choose anyone better than you. So,
thank you very much.
Anyway, turning to Ukraine in the time we have, and then back to Romania, and then we'll just have one. Everybody's going to be asked to say one quick word on competitiveness, one or two words, can't say more. Ukraine, you mentioned resiliency, innovation placement. Is Ukraine going to leapfrog with the innovation that you've developed through the war to be a manufacturing and, again, an agricultural exporting giant?
Thank you very much for this question. Actually, my answer would be quite simple. First of all, we see a boom of military tech in Ukraine, and of course military technological development is something which produces innovations. And a lot of people are working there with the help of foreign capital, with the help of foreign companies working right now. Point number two, a number of Ukrainian digital companies, actually software engineering companies, were relocated outside the country. They continue to do something for Ukraine, but of course, actually their contribution to Ukrainian development is rather limited. And point number three, for ordinary businessmen today, there is a kind of very tough choice. If you have the lack of labor force, you need to turn your eye to productivity issue. And in order to increase productivity, you need new digital technologies, you need new people, and here is a very tough choice, where to find money and where to find the people. Thank you.
So, quickly, do you believe we're on the cusp of a golden age of innovation? Yes or no?
Yes, I do believe in innovations.
Thank you. Now, Deloitte, Romania. Where do you think we need to go on tariffs? Do you think tariffs are good or bad? Should we get rid of them, or should we just, mess around with them?
Okay, well, we haven't researched this as Deloitte, so I'm not expressing Deloitte view. I'm just giving you my 2 cents on this. Tariffs are generally not conducive to growth, and there's a legitimate, natural expectation, which I doubt many will dispute, that we will be seeing a slowdown of growth due to these trade wars that are going on. At the same time, there were some underlying issues which needed to be addressed, and if we look at them in the context of Europe, not so much Romania, because Romania is part of the EU when it comes to trade, and not talking about the US, which is not my business to do. Europe could use certain tariff-related policies to address some of the, at least in my view, unfair trade practices of other blocs.
So your word,
to enhance local competitiveness.
your word, 1 or 2 words about economic competitiveness going forward. What is the vision? Innovation, talent, investment, infrastructure, all of them?
Surely all of these. Very little has not yet been said. We need deregulation, regulations with all the good intent behind them, and without ignoring or understating the need to evolve in terms of sustainability and other major challenges. Regulations need to be eased, need to become more pragmatic, such that to unlock innovation and enhance competitiveness. At times they can be put at work, as I said, to address some of the maybe disbalances in global trade. So deregulation for sure. Better capital allocation, that has been a challenge for us.
One word now, I'm cutting you off because I'm looking at this time. One word, what's your word? Deregulation, access to capital?
Deregulation, because
All right.
everything else has been
Good.
mentioned, like innovation and technology.
Hippolyte, golden age of placemaking innovation in Africa. Technology.
Technology.
Great. Kalin, does manufacturing matter? Do we need to make things?
Yes, but if you ask me about 2 words, they are work hard. If you ask for 3 words, study, learn, which is the same, and work hard.
I think you have more than a few words because everyone else took a few. So back to that question. Does manufacturing matter? And what can we do to reverse the deindustrialization that's occurring?
Yeah, of course, it matters. Recently, I was with Turkish business people from the construction sector, and they explained me that they have the same problem now, even in Turkey, with the labor. The young people, they want to be influencer, and they want to work just sitting and making photos with a box of cigarettes or with this mineral water, but not producing. So it's one story to make photos with this water and earn $5 for it. Another story to work in a factory and produce this water. And I strongly believe that the second is the only way the world can go forward. It's nothing, create nothing. So yes, manufacturing is extremely important.
So manufacturing's not dirty, dumb, dangerous, and disappearing. Hippolyte, yes or no?
I think manufacturing matter. It matters even more within the African continent, because that's the path to having higher value jobs. And that's the path to actually reducing migration pressure, which is something that we no longer want, either in Europe or in America. So manufacturing matters very much in terms of convergence, global income convergence. It matters very much in terms of really handling migration issues.
So manufacturing, smart, safe, surging, sustainable. I see you nodding, Lulzim. Final comment before we conclude, because I'm getting the infamous eye from George. Quick comment, Lulzim. We've only got 1 minute.
Absolutely, manufacturing, production. When one country is doing well, too well, dark factories all over China with technology that has been reverse engineered. Yes, tariffs to punish unfair trade practices and to make it possible for innovation and merit and hard work to be rewarded and not to be punished. So disruption of a trade system that is not working, a global trade system that is supposed to be fair and competitive, but it's not.
Okay,
because of primarily one actor, and manufacturing through innovation and through investing heavily in the update of our young generations and with AI and robotics and mechatronics and all the new technological advancements.
Thank you. So in conclusion, I want to thank our fantastic panel. We didn't have enough time. 45 minutes is hardly enough for this great group. But going forward, the connection between competitiveness, economic productivity, national security, all comes down to innovation, capacity, and capability, and having governments that support innovation and are not innovation hostile. And so we all have to work to accomplish that. And I will say that the next GFCC meeting will take place October 19th to 22nd in Pittsburgh, one of the heartlands of the Industrial Revolution, been totally transformed. The theme will be on the convergence of IT, autonomy, robotics, AI, and the bioeconomy. And we welcome, of course, our GFCC leaders and a good delegation from Romania. So I want to thank George Scuturo and the New Economy Strategy Center for including this great panel on economic transformation. And of course, without that, we won't have the security for a free, democratic, and a vital world in the future. So thank you all very much for this great discussion.